edition of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator for the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Today we are joined by Kim Wallace Carlson. She's the Director of Strategic Communications for the Kauffman Foundation. Kim, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me here, Steve.
First of all, I want to say I love your LinkedIn profile. I wish more of our students would do profiles like that.
Sure.
Kauffman Foundation, that looks like it's been the perfect fit for you, like between education and entrepreneurship. It seems like you're really passionate about those two.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, philanthropy was nothing that I learned about growing up or in school. It was something that I found myself introduced to throughout my career. And what I love about the work is you're telling stories for good, right? When you're working in mission-based organizations, you're not necessarily trying to sell something like a product. You're selling an idea, you're selling knowledge. And what better way to use your skills as a journalism student to tell the stories of good?
So what you're doing now, when you graduate from KU, did you have any idea this is what you would be doing?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So when I graduated from KU, I was on the news information track, magazine journalism focus, and I graduated at the height of the financial collapse. Also during the time when magazines were really changing and print was changing. So while I did have an opportunity to work in print magazines, and it was wonderful, I loved it. I worked at a consumer magazine based in Topeka, Kansas. I saw the writing on the wall that print was changing and I needed to sharpen some other skills. So I knew that going into digital publishing and other storytelling would be good. And thinking through how you use those journalism skills to tell stories for a multitude of organizations, brands, and entities.
So what were some of those transferable skills that you've been able to carry on? I mean, I know you've done a lot with like audience engagement, content strategy. I mean, what are some of those skills that have helped you throughout your career?
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing, first and foremost, it's always about writing. Can you write? Can you communicate? Can you tell a story? If you can write, you can probably edit. You can probably figure out how to tell a story on video, but you've got to be able to put something on paper to get a message through. That's number one for me. So I always look for great writing skills. And great writing skills isn't just about writing a feature story. That can be how you present yourself in an email. That can be how you write a paper or a LinkedIn profile, right? So I always look for grounding in writing. But then it comes to, can you be curious about people and brands and products and missions? Because that's where the journalism comes in. It's asking those questions. Being curious. I always go back to the 5 W's and the H. Every single project. Who, what, when, where, why, and how, because that's how you get the depth of information you need.
And I know you're a first-gen student. Did that create any sort of challenges early in your career, or were you just always kind of figure things out as you went along? Because I know when I work with first-gen students, a lot of times they just don't know where to look for jobs or how to be prepared. I mean, did you just kind of learn as you go, or did you have some assistance? You
know, I was blessed with the opportunity at the KU Journalism School to be part of the multicultural journalism scholars. I had a wonderful mentor in Miss Christy Bradford, who has since passed.
I remember Christy.
And I had the resources at KU to support me and help me understand what to know and what to find out, because I didn't know what I didn't know. The biggest thing I learned through my resources and my networks here was how to ask for help, how to engage your network, what even a network was. When you think about networking, you think about something really fancy and it's suits and people. No, it's just really asking people like, hey, can you think about me when it's the next opportunity? But I think too, as a first-gen student, you're always used to doing things on your own. So learning how to ask for help and knowing that people are really gracious with their time opens up a lot of opportunity.
And I won't ask you what a typical day is like, because I have a feeling it's probably different every day. So what's like a month or maybe a year? I mean, do you have certain projects you work on through the year? I mean, what is kind of like your primary focus?
Yeah, you know, with all of my communications jobs throughout my career, it's always been about what is the goal of either the project or the client you're serving or the thing that you're building in-house. So for us currently at the foundation, we've been relaunching our grant making strategy. So that's been thinking through, again, who, what, when, where, why, how how we communicate a message, also how we make sure that our audiences understand how to engage with us. There's a little bit of this work that really involves what we call user experience. So how is your audience navigating through different processes to understand what you provide for them and what questions they have. So from any day, it can be answering general inquiries and learning something about our audience to say, oh, we didn't address this on the website, let's make sure to answer that question. To then also hosting office hours and webinars to help educate our audience and bring them in. And then there's things like, making advertisements and placing copy. So every day is a little bit different, but it all still comes down to communicating, building something beautiful that resonates with our audiences.
And I know you've been at the Kauffman Foundation for like close to 11 years. Mm-hmm. This is your second stint there. And your first stint, you did more with what? Social media and website?
Yeah, I managed the website and ran our social media accounts.
And that was probably still kind of fresh when you started. I mean, what did you learn about that experience, to learn about yourself and the skills you developed there?
Social media has exploded since its inception when I was at KU. Dating myself here, but social media started when I was a freshman at KU. And the evolution of social for students, opening up to families and to brands, was huge. And then when I was working in social deeply in 2012, the tactics that we use then don't apply today. So it all still comes down to engagement and storytelling, but the way you get there changes a lot. Our team that works on social media, they blow me out of the water every day because there are things that change every day with the work that it doesn't apply with what I knew back in 2012. So that space is a fascinating one to watch, especially when working with brands.
And when you change positions throughout your career, again, you've been at Kauffman for over 7 years. How did you always know it was time to leave? Were you always looking for a new challenge or building that skill set? I mean, what kind of influenced your decision to kind of move on?
Yeah, every organization where I have moved on, it's always been about growth. It's been about opportunity. It's been about making sure that I'm always learning, that I'm always being challenged, and that my skills are being used. So what I tell people, both in my network, but also people I mentor, is if you find yourself a little bit bored or that your skills are getting rusty, it might be time. But that doesn't always mean it's time to leave an organization. Sometimes it means you ask for a stretch project. Sometimes it means you raise your hand and say, hey, I want to try this thing. Is there an opportunity here? And then whether your organization has that or not is kind of when you kind of know. I would also say, though, too, with my background going from magazines and print to diversifying my skills, you have to watch what your industry is doing. We know that in journalism and in media and communications, it's a rapidly changing landscape. So it's in our best interest to always be looking at what is changing, especially with the onset of AI and all the different changes in our specific industry now. How can you always be building those skills and learning?
And how big is the team you work with? Is it about 9?
Yeah, my team is 10 total. I'm the 10th one. I'm the hardest one.
And do you meet frequently with your team, or do they have a lot of creative control, or kind of what's your philosophy with working with your team?
Yeah, it's a really collaborative environment. We have regular team meetings, we have project-based meetings, we have celebration meetings. That's one of my favorites. We do quarterly celebrations where the team brings out their favorite project from the past quarter and says, why they loved working on it, what it meant to them. And not only is it a way to boost each other and cheer each other on, but it's also a way to remind each other, like, look at all the work that we touch. My team does graphic design, we do writing and editing, we do social, we do the art in the building. It's a super diverse team, and sometimes you forget the little things that come up in our day-to-day.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in celebrating those little things. So when you recruit talent, is there one or two things you really look for in personnel? I mean, the soft skills, the hard skills, combination of the two?
It's all of it. It's all of it. But I think the number one is an eagerness to learn. I don't expect every candidate to come in and meet every single qualification. I'm looking for somebody who can tell me a story about how they've tackled the job requirements or how they would try to. And I try to think through with them where their growth is so that when they do meet all of those requirements after a couple of years of working, how they can grow. Because once you have really good talent, you want to keep them, you want to grow them. Our team is made up of people who have been at the foundation for several years, and then we have different interns and fellows who have come through who I've always called and tried to recruit to come back whenever it's possible. So yeah, it's always that eagerness to learn and ability to stretch and grow.
And it sounds like you kind of consider yourself a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, you had the Stanford Certificate of Completion, Design Thinking and Art of Innovation.
Yeah.
That sounds intense. I mean, what was involved with that?
That was an incredible program, and I give credit to one of our former VPs who urged me to take that program. It was a week-long intensive at Stanford where you learned design thinking, and you learned how to flip ideas on their head, how to bring out creativity in people. And it was one of those, Steve, I'd be honest, like I was a little like, well, what is this really? This is kind of silly. And I was there for 24 hours and I drank the juice because it helped open up how you can be more creative, take simple notions and look at them for all different angles. One exercise we did was taking a paper clip and making it into different things besides a paper clip. And at first you're like, okay, it's a paper clip, okay, it's a toothpick, okay, it's something else. But then you had to really stretch and grow and get creative that you're telling stories again of what this object could be and taking away the main meaning. I took that back to the work, and whenever wicked problems came up, you just try to attack it from different angles and think through, have we exhausted it all before we move forward? It's exhilarating.
So were you physically there at Stanford, or was that online?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, for a week. It was amazing.
And I noticed too on your LinkedIn profile, you manage a pretty good sized budget.
Yeah.
Is that a skill you developed over time? Because I know that's a challenge.
That is one that I learned on the job throughout several jobs. You know, I think that is a skill, especially for journalists. You know, if you rise up in a newsroom or magazines or in communications, you will have to have those sort of management skills and budgetary skills. Again, I've been really blessed to have amazing leaders throughout my time who have took me under their wing, showed me how to work the budgets, helped me think through the questions to ask. You know, I've obviously managed my own budgets at home and through my time at KU, but doing it for a large organization, it takes a lot of intense time, and it's a different skill. And it's one that is, again, transferable in industries.
Now, are there times where you have to make a convincing case, like, this is why we need this much money? I mean, do you get to flex your muscle there?
Yeah, and that's where, again, communications comes into play, that strategic communications, that persuasion, making the case. You know, my big thing that I always love to do, and my team will giggle at this, I always say I can give you a small, a medium, and a large. And, you know, you're usually kind of angling for that medium, but you can always give some options of what we could do, but also show what the different consequences, positive and negative, are of spending or advocating for a certain tool or program or whatever it is. And just thinking through, you know, what is necessary and what the consequences are can always make your case.
I should have asked this earlier with your title, Director of Strategic Communications. We used to have that as an emphasis. Now it's digital marketing, communications, advertising, and PR.
Yeah.
Do you have kind of a nice, concise, if you had to define strategic communication, do you have a go-to line there?
That's a great question.
I know you've touched on some key terms already.
That's a great question. So I would say that strategic communications is the art of getting a message across to the right audience at the right time with the right tools and tactics, and that includes everything you just mentioned.
Oh, well said. What? Another thing I noticed on LinkedIn, you referred to an article. I think I can tell you're very passionate about like women in the workforce and making sure they succeed.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about those challenges they face? I mean, just like childcare alone and trying to balance all that, because I think in 2021 you had some great data and stories to share.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things, Steve, that even growing up, watching how my mom advocated for herself, and my parents were small business owners, how they ran their business, and then throughout the time in school, learning from mentors how to ask for the raises, ask for what you needed. I think that when it comes to women in the workforce and the economy, we just need more mentorship. We need more coaching to how to advocate for ourselves, and also how to do that research. Again, coming back to strategic communications and knowing the facts, if you have the data and you can make the case, that's how you get those salary increases. That's how you get those titles you want. But it takes someone to coach you on that, because especially with women, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. We haven't been taught these things. And just the gender norms and the stereotypes, they can really place a cloud over you. So having good mentors, both male and female mentors, and everyone in between there, is really important to advocating for yourself.
Yeah, well said. That one stat you had in that story really blew me away about how sometimes the cost of childcare for like two children can be like the cost of a mortgage. And I never thought of put that in perspective, but
yeah, and the math on that, I mean, you have to make some hard decisions. Yeah.
Okay, before we move on to Fast Five, what advice would you have for a KU student that might want to do what you do right now someday?
Yeah, build your network.
Okay.
You know, there are going to be jobs out there that do not exist right now. So build your network of people who are doing cool things that you're interested in. I would say that look at people who are doing things that you exactly know what they're doing, and also, hey, I don't know what that title is. I want to find that out. Build that network so you can learn from them.
Another challenge when I advise students to, I hope you have some tips on this. So many times they want to find that perfect job right out of school, and they think that's going to be their career. Those days are pretty much over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what advice do you have for them in terms of like, I always say be patient. I always say, okay, build that network, build those skills, and then things kind of fall in place and people point you in the right direction. I mean, what do you say to those students that just want that perfect job as a 22, 23-year-old?
You have to define what perfect means to you. That goes down to your values, that goes down to how you want to spend your day, how you want to give your gifts, skills, and talents to an organization. So thinking about what's important to you in an employer. And sometimes you don't know that until you've had that experience. You know, I've had different places that I've worked that the hindsight taught me of like, okay, in my next gig, these are my requirements. I didn't know that at this time, but I got to learn that. Also getting feedback from people who work at these organizations, but sometimes you just have to dive right in and just learn, get your feet wet, and try.
No, well said. I'm glad we're on the same page here. Okay, so Fast Five.
Sure.
I know you recruit talent. So what is the best job interview question to ask? Is there that one you always have to ask before that interview's over?
Yes, the one that I love is, what would you bring to our organization that is uniquely you?
I like that a lot. I'm going to write that one down. I noticed in your previous roles you were a copywriter for an ad agency, and the Kansas City Zoo was one of your clients. Any memorable zoo copy that you remember you can share?
Oh gosh.
I did see where you did a tagline for Jazoo.
Oh yeah, I worked on Jazoo. Yeah, Jazoo was fun. That was the big project I worked on. That was the year that it was about the big cats, and it was cocktails, coattails, and cattails.
Oh, nice. That was a tagline.
Yeah.
And that's still going strong, right?
It's still going strong, yeah.
What's your favorite memory working on JPlay? Is there one great story or people you worked with or something that jumps out?
Well, I would be remiss if I did not mention that I met my dear husband in JPlay class.
Oh, nice.
So we were both in JPlay together, and there was a feature that we were required to do in JPlay. It was your personal essay. And so my personal essay was about my relationship with my dad, and his essay was about his time in Scotland liking to be alone. And we laugh about it a lot because my husband is the ultimate introvert. And I'm like, you wrote your essay about liking to be alone. But I still got him, Steve. I nailed him down. But yeah, being in JPlay and meeting my husband, but also that personal essay was really important to me.
So what was your role at JPlay? Were you more writer, editor, or combination?
I was a writer.
Awesome. And what was your favorite class at KU?
Oh. That's a really unfair question because I've had so many amazing classes at KU, hard classes that expanded me. I can give you my top two.
Okay.
I absolutely love First Amendment class with Ted Fred.
Item for media law, yeah.
That class was so difficult, but it expanded me, it challenged me, it made me think critically. It helped me think about how to make an argument, and to have Ted Fred as a teacher, he was incredible, and rest in peace. I would also say, of course, Carol Holstead, JPlay. Carol was an amazing mentor and advocate for me and shaped my career, and that class put me on the path to where I am.
And she's still here. We might have to walk around and check her office. Okay, last question. Thanksgiving's in a couple of weeks. What's your favorite side dish for Thanksgiving?
Oh, mashed potatoes.
Oh,
mashed
with gravy?
Potatoes, no gravy. My mom every year is like, why don't you put the gravy on? I'm like, every year, Mom, I don't put the gravy on, just butter, lots of butter.
Right. Well, hey, Kim, I know you have an incredibly busy schedule. I appreciate you dropping by to chat about your career and provide advice. And I love what you have to say about dipping your toes out there and building that network. And I always want to say, hey, cheers to your career. I always love following our KU alums. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Steve.